Strike to the core. How a Ukrainian MiG-29 took out the FSB headquarters. The Russia-Ukraine war is increasingly being called a war of creativity. Remote-controlled drones quickly gave way to drones operated via fiber-optic cables, and now drone motherships have entered the battlefield. They approach the front line and release swarms of FPV drones. These small drones stealthily infiltrate behind enemy lines, hide near roads, or perch on utility poles, lying in wait for their target. On the Russian side, there was Operation Potok, where troops crawled through a gas pipeline to strike the Ukrainian rear. But Ukraine, in turn, has learned how to terrorize the Russian Navy using naval drones. And they've also perfected the art of eliminating Russian command centers, killing generals and even admirals, as in the infamous strike on the Black Sea Fleet headquarters. What we're about to describe today is even more audacious: a strike on the FSB headquarters. In other words, a strike at the very core of Russia's security apparatus. Considering that Putin himself came from this organization, this operation hit Russia particularly hard. This video is about that mission. May 26, 2025. 5:45 a.m. local time or 10:45 p.m. on May 25th in New York City. The night's just getting started on Times Square. Meanwhile, 5,000 miles away on the other side of the globe, a Ukrainian pilot climbs the ladder to his MiG-29 fighter jet. At first glance, it looks like a standard Soviet aircraft, one of the many built in the 1980s. But under its wings are not Soviet missiles, but precision-guided French Assam hammer bombs. And inside the cockpit, among outdated analog gauges, sits an iPad duct taped to the instrument panel. A Soviet airframe, French weapons, American navigation, Ukrainian software. A stunning fusion of systems and eras that were never meant to work together. The French Assam hammer is a masterpiece of precision. It can be guided from as far as 70 kilometers away, about 45 miles, and strike a specific window even under GPS jamming. That's possible because the bomb uses a trio of guidance systems: GPS, inertial navigation, and terminal image-based correction. It also has a rocket booster that kicks in after release, accelerating it to near supersonic speed. But there was one major obstacle. The Soviet-era MiG-29 doesn't understand GPS. It doesn't even know that satellites exist. Its computing power is comparable to a first-generation Pentium processor. It can't calculate target coordinates, can't transmit them to a bomb, and certainly can't understand where a target is located. Ukrainian engineers came up with a solution. The target coordinates were preloaded into a regular iPad mounted in the cockpit. Custom software on the tablet converted the data into a format that could be interpreted by the bomb's launch interface. That information was then transmitted via cable to an adapter installed on the pylon where the bomb was mounted. In this way, the French bomb received accurate targeting data, not through standard avionics, but through a completely functional workaround. The MiG-29 itself still had no idea where the bomb was going, but the bomb knew exactly. It was a field workaround, a digital duct tape solution, but it worked. And that was all it took to guide one of the most advanced munitions ever made straight into the most sensitive nerve of Russian power, their security apparatus. Ukrainian intelligence had identified an operational FSB group operating out of a building in the village of Glatovo in Russia's Belgorod region, just 5 kilometers or about 3 miles from the Ukrainian border. It wasn't an official FSB facility, but based on radio intercepts and aerial reconnaissance, personnel in uniform were observed inside. Secure communications were detected and movements around the site were carried out under enhanced protection. At 5:46 a.m., the pilot strapped in, seatbelt click, hand on the throttle, a push forward, and the twin turbofan engines roared to life. The MiG shuddered, came alive, and driven by 10 tons of thrust, began rolling down the concrete runway. The vibration crawled up his spine. Speed surged 100, 150, 200, 240 kilometers per hour, or around 150 miles per hour. Liftoff. Moments later, the jet vanished into the morning fog, leaving only a hot trail behind. By 6:15 a.m., the MiG was flying at an extremely low altitude, just 50 meters off the ground. It skimmed over farmland, weaved around cell towers, and narrowly missed power lines. There was no terrain following radar, No autopilot like on Western bombers. Everything was manual. Every movement as precise as a surgeon's scalpel. Every second lived on the edge of instinct. Fly too low and death comes in a heartbeat. Climb too high and within seconds Russian missiles will lock on. But at this altitude he remained invisible. The Russian S-400 air defense systems couldn't detect targets flying below the radar horizon. Still, he couldn't stay that low for long. To release the bombs, he'd have to climb to 5,000 meters, about 16,000 feet. And once he did, every Russian radar for hundreds of miles would light up, from Belgorod to well beyond the Arctic Circle. At 6:22, the pilot pulled back on the stick. The MiG pitched up and began to climb. The altimeter ticked steadily, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000 meters. The necessary altitude was reached, but then the cockpit was pierced by a siren. A Russian S-400 radar had locked on. Missile launch was seconds away. A thick, gloved thumb pressed the red release button. The bomb latches disengaged. Drop confirmed. 2 sharp-nosed bombs arced upward, racing toward their target. Distance to impact, 40 kilometers, or about 25 miles. Time to target, 120 seconds. 2 minutes. That's how long someone on the ground had left to live. The MiG-29 flipped into a steep diving turn, rapidly descending toward the safety of low altitude. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away, there were 2 sharp clicks. The Assam hammer bombs deployed their wings, and their rocket boosters ignited. Flames trailed behind as the French weapons devoured distance at incredible speed. Navigation systems continuously cross-checked GPS, inertial data, and onboard sensors, adjusting course dozens of times per second. 110 seconds passed. The bombs, guided by onboard automation, altered their flight path and plunged almost vertically toward the target. Russia's air defenses kicked in. The S-400 system launched 2 48 N6 missiles, streaking through the sky at Mach 6. But try hitting an object dropping nearly straight down at close to 1,000 kilometers per hour with a radar signature of less than 0.1 signature meter, roughly the size of a dinner plate turned on its edge. Inside the Russian command post, operators stared at their monitors, jaws clenched. The S-400 computer readout showed the probability of interception under 12%. And no one could be sure where those French bombs were headed, maybe toward them. A 12% chance meant you were more likely to die than survive. The missiles missed. They self-destructed. 6:27 a.m. Times Square is glowing with neon lights, laughter, chatter, and life in full swing. But 5,000 miles away, the first bomb is zeroing in on its target. Just a few hundred meters above the ground, its onboard visual system compares the live video feed from its camera with reference images stored in memory. These photos were taken by drones from different angles at various times of day. The bomb's AI analyzes roof shapes, window placements, shadows from trees. It finds a perfect match. This is the building. The bomb adjusts its angle of attack. Fractions of a second later, the system confirms target locked. A moment later, the bomb pierces the roof. A shaped charge burns through concrete and steel. Then the main explosive detonates. Nearly 250 kilograms or 550 pounds of TNT unleash a shockwave with a pressure of 15 atmospheres. That's a force of almost 13.5 tons pressing on every square foot. The surface area of the average human body is about 5.4 square feet, meaning anyone inside was instantly crushed under the equivalent of 70 tons. Walls collapse. Furniture is pulverized. Human flesh becomes indistinguishable from the wreckage. Just 0.3 seconds later, the second bomb hits. It strikes the neighboring section of the building. The structure can't hold. Floors cave in on each other. The building implodes. Within 5 seconds, all that remains of the FSB outpost is smoke and dust. Files, equipment, personnel, everything destroyed. No one saw it coming. Strikes on airfields, oil depots, even military command posts, those had become routine. But an FSB facility? In a tiny village with nothing of note on the map? The attack sent shockwaves through Russian telegram channels. Some claimed it was a Ukrainian sabotage group. Others said it was a meteor strike. But soon, photos of the French Assam bomb fragments surfaced. The building didn't just house regular officers. According to unofficial sources, It was a key hub for operations targeting Ukrainian resistance networks, monitoring data channels, and planning actions along the border. Officially, Russia never acknowledged that it was an FSB facility, but leaks on Telegram and the state's reaction spoke volumes. The area was cordoned off. Investigators were rushed to the scene. The FSB is not just any agency, it's a symbol of Putin's regime. Putin himself is a product of the FSB. This organization runs the repression machine, the torture, the purges, the wars. A strike on it's more than just a military blow, it's a psychological one. It sends a message there will be no compromises. The stakes are all in. One side wins, the other disappears. The Ukrainians are fighting with everything they have. One old MiG-29, 2 French bombs, a regular iPad, 1 Ukrainian pilot, and the result was a devastating strike that rattled the Russian system. Operations like this make one thing clear. In war, it's not the weapons that matter most, it's people, their will to fight, and when necessary, to die, for values anyone with a conscience can understand, freedom and independence. Weapons can be bought, but willpower, you either have it or you don't. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate a like and a subscription to our channel. See you again soon.